everyone. Thanks for checking into the Pit Stop. It's Will.
And James, this is our recap for Amazing Race Season 35, Episode 9, In the Belly of the Earth. I can't believe how fast this season is going by. And to help us recap this episode, it's been a minute since she's joined us for a recap. So I'm really looking forward to catching up with the queen, Miss Laura Pierson. Hi, Laura.
Hi, babies.
So, Laura, obviously a lot has happened this season since the last time we spoke to you. I'm just kind of curious, now that we're more than halfway through season 35, what are your overall thoughts, and what are your thoughts in terms of the remaining teams at this point of the race?
For some reason, this season feels like old school Amazing Race to me. And I don't know why. I haven't felt that way in a while. It might be because we haven't been able to see planes, trains, and automobiles really. So it's been fun to see all of that. I think that this season, everywhere that they've gone has just been so epic. And, you know, I have to say, I'm a little surprised on the final teams. I was not expecting, and I feel bad, so I'm not going to call anybody out, but I was not expecting numerous of these teams to still be in.
Ooh, okay.
I don't disagree.
I will say, Will and I were talking about it too when we were watching this episode. I love it because it does feel like old school Amazing Race, but I went back and I recently rewatched season 4. I also am now rewatching season 9. And I can't quite tell if the 90 minutes is a disservice to the show or if it's actually a benefit yet. Like, because back in the day, we got to see a lot more of like teams interacting at pit stops. And I think that as a viewer is very interesting just to kind of get an idea as to where the relationships are. I think it would help us understand why Steve and Anna Lee were actually U-turned in India.
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like with these 90-minute episodes, they could have added more of those elements into it. I just feel like it's a little bit more drawn out, but I don't know if it's drawn out in the places it should be drawn out.
Yes, and I said this to me, words. This episode to me was the weakest of the whole season.
I would agree.
I think because you only have 6 teams, all of the challenges were very linear, where it was like, start it, do the task, and then you finish. Whereas what I'm missing and what I would love to see and would make it even more old school Amazing Race without, the travel, because this episode didn't include any type of airfare or train or any type of travel. Give me a challenge where they actually have to like do something they have no clue what it is. And I gave James the example earlier when we were watching of when, I don't know what season it was, but they had to use a microscope to look at diamonds and like assess the value. Do something that requires teams to have a little
Not
bit
as
more
straightforward.
Yeah, like cleaning off the tubes was very like one and done. Finding the buoys was one and done. Going to build the dragon was one and done. Like it was all very like just complete it and move on. But I wanted to see something that really threw everybody through a loop, which would allow the episode to feel more full. Yeah, that's what I was missing this episode.
But it is true, because I think like we're, I think about so many times that while I was on the race, how much shit talking happened. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, Blair and Haley, let's get them out. They're so effing annoying. Or like, oh, I really like this person. Or like whatever it is, you want to see that. And the fact that we didn't, that's a really good point. I do, however, feel like we're able to see the teams play a little bit more.
Yes.
Which I do like. And you're able to see the location more and how beautiful it is, and hear that there's castles every 15 miles. But I would agree that you need to see the interactions between the teams, and that was missing.
Yeah, and I like you were saying, Laura, I do like that we get a little bit more like human moments with the teams in these 90-minute episodes where like, Todd talking about dad detours and like tying it back to their relationship back home, or Robin and Chelsea talking about like them just going to enjoy this leg and how proud their kids are going to be. And just like, I like seeing those moments where I feel like in a 60-minute episode, it's so quick and fast paced and it's more of the competitive side of the race. But I also think with the 90-minute episodes, I'm worried about the competitive. With more teams at the earlier of the season, it felt so competitive and so fast-paced, like a traditional 60-minute episode. But now with fewer teams, it just feels more drawn out. And I don't know if I'm just trying to figure out what elements they could add to maybe
I
make
have
it.
I have it. I know
Spill
what
it, Will. What is it?
So in our season, like 2, the one challenge that caused teams to be so disoriented, and even us, was, yes, I have to decorate this car. But there was a little detail in the clue that said, after you're done, go and do X or whatever.
Yep.
It would connect a horn. So for this dragon task, okay, have them build a dragon, but then they have to go, like, I don't know,
Add another detail to it or something.
find a torch and put the fire in its mouth. I don't know. Something that was like, that causes teams to miss it. Because teams will. And it adds another dynamic to the challenge where it's not just like build the IKEA puzzle and then move on.
Right.
You know what's interesting about that I was thinking that when they had to put those things on their backs, I thought that when at the very beginning, I forgot who it was, but like the round thing on top fell off of it. Do you know what I'm talking about? Like, with that, I thought that they were gonna have to go back and redo the whole thing.
Exactly.
Like that's old school Amazing Race, where it is so hard and the people are crying and they're sweating and all of that. But this was like, okay, I'm walking down the street, shit's falling off. I'm just gonna pick it back up and here you go. It's somewhat together. Like, no.
I agree. It feels it would be more hard if they had to make sure nothing fell off of it. And if it did fall off, they have to go back and reapply it and figure out what happened, why it's not staying. Like, yeah, I think that could have been interesting.
Or like stain the wood, like give it some type of like, because all that stuff they were showing, the cutting boards, was stained. Why not paint it and then have to deliver it to multiple locations? Because going from point A to point B and just having this stuff on your back, it just it wasn't dynamic enough for me.
And if it's falling off, then what's the point? Like, why am I gonna spend so much time making sure it doesn't fall off when that's not going to be something I'm going to be judged on?
Yeah, and to see only one team have to go back because they forgot something, it screws one team over. But if you add more elements, it causes other teams to potentially, be a little more frazzled.
Yeah. Let's dive into this episode. We already kind of jumped the gun a little bit in terms of this roadblock. So at the beginning of this episode, we find out teams are still staying in Slovenia. They have to travel on foot to Congress Square, and they're given €0 for this leg of the race. You have Greg and John departing in first, back-to-back 3 first place finishes, like incredible, leaving at 9:56 a.m., followed by Todd and Ashley at 9:57. We get a little bit of a soundbite interview with these two talking about how they're getting along great. And now when I really think back on the episode, this was the first time I think we've actually seen them bicker a lot and not really being on the same page. So I feel like it kind of foreshadows their journey this leg. Rob and Corey leaving at 10:07. And then we have Joel and Garrett at 10:29 a.m., Robin and Chelsea 10:38 a.m., and Stephen and Ali. And I like to put their time in here because they've made up so much time on this leg. But Stephen and Ali left at 10:42 a.m. They get to Congress Square and they find out it's their roadblock. Who can deliver the goods? The participating teammate must pick up a carrier called a Krosny. I'm probably butchering that, but they will have, they what?
That was perfect.
Krosny, perfect. They will have to make their way to a local shop and then attach over a dozen wooden utensils to the carrier and then deliver them to one of the judges waiting nearby. So, Laura, let's say you and Tyler are on this season of The Amazing Race and you get the clue who can deliver the goods. Out of the two of you, who do you think is going to do this roadblock?
I would do it probably. I mean, it's funny because everyone's like sense of direction. I'm like, it didn't seem, there were so many people walking around. Yeah. I don't think that it mattered if you can find your way out of a paper bag because you could have asked anyone where to go every 2 steps.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my God. I have a way to make this challenge better.
Okay.
Well, they have to go find the individual pieces in multiple locations and then put it together to deliver. Because it was just all on the floor. Let's just go to like 3 different locations, grab their bowls, your pots, whatever they are, then put it together.
Yeah, and then bring
little
it
more.
back to that main shop then, and then assemble your
I was
costume.
going to say, then they have to sell them, and whoever makes the most money
Ooh.
gets an advantage.
I always loved those
Ooh.
challenges where they would have to like sell stuff. On
Isn't
the
that
older
not
seasons.
allowed anymore?
Yeah, it's not. I don't think it's.
You can't
Beg. Right.
beg for money, but I think you could sell a product.
I mean, we haven't seen it in a while. I don't feel like the selling of stuff, but
Unless it needs to be like regulated by the government.
the participants for this roadblock are John, Todd, Corey, Joel, Chelsea, and Anna Lee. It seems like that it's very tedious. Everyone's trying to really pay attention in terms of the detail of how things are attached to the Crosney. I think that requires a lot of patience. Will, I think you would have been a lot better at this than myself. John, kind of sets the pace, I feel like, for this roadblock. You hear him say it's just more being very slow and steady. I think that's really working in him and Greg's favor this race. They haven't made a ton of mistakes. And that slow and steady kind of calm mentality and approach has served them really well these last 3 legs. But I thought it was hilarious. The moment John hands the judge the Crosney, the judge goes, "It's very good. It's very good." And then a piece falls off of it. And I just thought that was hilarious. But
Yes.
I think it goes back to our conversation at the beginning of this.
Mhm.
I just feel like if anything fell off of that, it shouldn't have been counted. I don't think the judge should have said it's good. I think that should have made it a lot more harder. It makes it a little bit more of an equalizer from the very beginning of this leg. And I just think that makes you have to go back and reassemble. I don't know. Maybe I just feel like it's not hard enough.
It seemed like amateur, kind of. When you really think about it, The Amazing Race, you watch and you're like, I mean, the first question I always get is it really hard? And usually the tasks are hard. That wasn't very challenging.
Yeah.
I would say like throughout the entire race for us, there were maybe like 3 tasks that were just so easy.
Mhm.
Out of, I don't know, 30 that we did along the entire course of the race. It's very rare that a task is just like so easy.
Mhm.
But also, like, you have to think too, they put together the race and they probably don't anticipate certain tasks being that easy. Like when we were in Cambodia, Phil, when we got to the pit stop, was so shocked that you did the tile thing as fast as you did. You beat out all the challenge testers, all the producers. Like they can't anticipate where teams are going to excel and actually make a task look easy. Do you know what I mean?
Babe,
It's hard to anticipate.
are you questioning my ability?
No, I'm just saying it proves my point that like they probably thought it would be so challenging, but you're a rare breed where you went in and did it like that. And it was probably like, oh shit, like 2, 3 attempts. Like that's wild when people are doing 10, 11, 15 attempts.
Yeah.
Like you can't really plan for that when you're putting together the Amazing Race.
But this wasn't a task where you had multiple attempts. Like
Right.
it wasn't something that allowed teams to screw up. Like even the stamps that they did when they were in Jaipur, like that task was, you had to do so many times, which makes
Right.
it such a more like frustrating dynamic challenge than put this together, follow the example and walk down the street. Like that's why
Sorry, I just think it was so funny when you saw one of them like trying to sneak past the other.
Oh yeah.
Like it's like an elephant walking past you. Like I see you.
Yeah.
and you can't move faster.
Yeah. I just thought that was kind of funny.
Well, because like, Anna Lee did make up some time. She finished assembling her Crosney before Chelsea. Anna Lee's got a bit of a lead, and then Anna Lee has some shit fall off of hers. And so Chelsea's like, oh, there's Anna Lee. And yeah, you're right. She's trying to like keep going. But then like not even like 500 steps later, like Chelsea's shit starts falling apart. Like it's just...
When that one ball fell off, I was like, oh, she's not going to find it. Da, da, da. And then she just like walked over and picked it back up and kept going.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. But Chelsea, unfortunately, was the only team to have to go back because she forgot one of the pieces that went onto the Crosney. So she lost that time. Annalise still gains all that time over her, and now she has to go back. And I feel like Robin just waiting when she saw Anna Lee come around the corner. Robin didn't seem very pleased that Chelsea wasn't there yet.
No. The clip where the teams are showing up, everybody's kind of like meandering to get there. But then you see Corey, and he's like sprinting. He has the most hustle out of any of these competitors. And I love seeing that. Like, he's like trying to get there as fast as he can and do it really quick. Granted, do I think that it caused mistakes later on this leg? Sure, but I just love the hustle.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing too with maybe the longer episodes is like when I feel like it's a shorter episode, more condensed, it feels like teams are constantly moving and hustling, right? So when it's not seen like that, it doesn't feel like the teams have a lot of hustle. And that's why we've been saying the last couple of episodes, Will and I, about just like some of these teams will rip open the clue and then they're like, proceed to blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, I would rip that shit open, but like, proceed, blah, 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 blah. Okay, let's go. Like, it's just like everyone's just taking their sweet ass time.
Yeah. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I think that we will reference that shortly in regards to Corey. But I do agree with you. I'm like, listen, I think that if we were racing against these people, they wouldn't even have a chance. Like, even though they're making it look easy and Greg and John have won like 15 legs out of 12, like, it's just, you know, I think we'd run circles around them.
All right, route info. They have to drive more than they have to drive to a cave called Pivka Cave, where there are more than 8,000 caves in Slovenia, which is incredible. Legend has it that this is where dragons live. Teams will have to descend into the Pivka Cave and make their way the length of 8 football fields to find their next clue. That already sounds crazy, but we get a little bit of a self-drive again. We start to see, I would say, some miscommunication in terms of Todd and Ashley. They're not seeming to be on the same page in terms of where to go directionally. We get a little bit of a funny moment with Todd talking about dad detours because it happens a lot at home, him just kind of getting lost. We have Steve and Anna Lee. I mean, Steve and Anna Lee, to me, from last episode and maybe the episode before, there was definitely a shift in their dynamic this episode. They seem to work really well together. Anna Lee's smiling a lot more. While they're driving to the cave, they end up passing Joel and Garrett, just her being that competitive racer. She's using the exit lane to pass everyone. Like, this is why I love and appreciate Anna Lee being on the race, because she is probably the most competitive racer this entire season.
I would agree. I love her. I'm like a super freaky fan of hers. I think she's great. I think she's smart. Again, I've said this, that I love a father-daughter duo, and like the little emotional, I don't want to get ahead of ourselves, but like the little emotional moment that they both had is just, she's awesome. I think that I would love to see them win.
Well, I feel like you had something to say.
No, this is like the first point in the episode where I think of many points in the episode where we see teams start making mistakes, which is kind of abnormal this late in the race when there's only 6 teams left. People usually have kind of learned some lessons and they're able to like read your clue and identify directions before getting in the car. And when Todd and Ashley are driving and he misses the turn, I'm like, y'all have been driving multiple legs of this race. I think we should be a little more, savvy, because Todd and Ashley have been a team at the top for the past couple of weeks, getting second place multiple times. So it's just a huge mistake that put them way behind everybody else by just making a wrong turn. And you can't make those mistakes this late in the race.
No.
Well, also because like one wrong turn, as he said, could lead to a 20-minute detour. You're in a foreign country. You're driving a stick shift. It's not like, you're used to driving in the United States where you can just make a U-turn or whatever. It's so different when you're driving abroad.
Yeah.
Well, and speaking of taking a wrong turn, we saw that with Robin and Chelsea. I don't know where the miscommunication was with them, but Will, you predicted this last last recap we did, we kind of did predictions moving forward. And Will was like, I feel like Robin and Chelsea could either get eliminated or fall back to the pack. Like if they don't have someone to follow in the race, because they've done that and it served them well. They got lost even trying to get to the cave system. They
saw it. They saw it and it said camping. And
I feel like Chelsea did say like we should turn there, and Robin was like, we're not going camping. That doesn't make sense. And then just kept driving past it.
I'm also like, in life, when you're driving on a highway, things are not like turn here for A, B, C, D, and E. It's not as like explicit. And if you have to just make those decisions and you have to go with your gut. And they were like, oh, it doesn't have marked parking. Let's keep going. I'm like, you just attempt it. You pass it up and then you're screwed if this isn't what it is. If this is what it is. I don't know. They kind of like
was it something in
themselves too much.
Was it something in the clue though? Because no other team had an issue with that. Like, how did everyone else know to turn there?
The additional info is always like, once you get there, find the marked parking and then park there. And I think they literally were so hung up on that. And they saw the camping and like, oh, it doesn't say cave. Let's not go there. I mean, it's just like a thing where I said last week of you don't have somebody to follow. You're going to second guess yourself so much and it's going to screw you over. And it did.
I feel like it was some of the self-fulfilling prophecy with them, where they just seemed like from the beginning of this episode, they were defeated. And I think that they brought that energy throughout the race. And I think that's probably why. It almost seemed like they checked out. Where normally, I mean, if you're racing, I feel like everyone else knew to go there. I mean, why would you pass it? They saw it. They even made a mention of it. Why not just stop, look? Worst comes to worst, it's 5 minutes that you've wasted rather than wasting what? 30
over an hour.
Minutes, an hour that they did waste. It just like, I don't know. They just seemed very off this episode.
It's like they were accepting their fate that they weren't going to win.
Yeah.
I'm jumping ahead here, but even at the pit stop, Chelsea even said like when our daughters see Rob and Corey and Greg and John, they're going to be like, oh, they don't, stand a chance in hell. But I'm also like, why are you putting down your skills? Because I think Chelsea and Robin are very capable when they want to be in terms of how they race. I mean, they did really well on a few legs. And I think that's a really interesting observation, Laura. Even throughout this episode, they were like, we're just going to go into this. We're just going to really enjoy this leg. So I'm like, did they already in their mind make up, like, we're going to
go?
Sorry, go ahead, babe.
No, I was just going to say it's that thing that we've all of us have said this before. When you exude confidence, even if you don't have that confidence, it really impacts your race. If you kind of like talk to yourself as though you're going to win, it impacts how you compete. And if you're just constantly putting yourself down and saying, well, we're never going to win because we have these boys or whatever it is, or we're at the back of the pack, woe is me, it really does impact your mindset. And I think the second you make a mistake, they shut down instead of like, okay, let's overcome it and move forward.
I mean, the thing with the race is that, I mean, as I said, I am somewhat shocked by the teams that are still in, because you never know who's going to win. There's so many times that the underdog has won the Amazing Race or got second or third place. So the fact that they just gave up, when I think that they honestly, if they really put their efforts into it, I think they could still be in it.
Well, they ended up figuring out their mistake. They ended up turning around. And when teams got to Pivka Cave and they went into it, did the 8 football fields or whatever, they got their next route info where they had to descend even further into the cave, where they would have to assemble a gigantic dragon wooden puzzle in order to receive their next clue from the Dragon Keeper. I feel like everyone had different approaches strategically on how they were going to assemble this dragon. We heard John and Greg picking a workstation. First off, I have to commend them in how they are thinking in the race, because we hear them say they're going to pick the workstation closest to the display to be able to get the best view. So not going back and forth too much. I thought that was brilliant. But then in terms of assembling, they said, we're going to start building from the ground up. Then we have Steve and Anna Lee who arrive in third, despite leaving the pit start last. They get to this third, a huge jump in the placements by them, and they decide to divide and conquer, where Anna Lee says, I'm going to start working on the head, you work on the body. So I kind of like seeing how these teams are really going into it, knowing their skills and their strengths maybe in terms of how to build this dragon puzzle. What did you all think about this task? Even though I know we kind of touched on it a little bit at the beginning of our recap.
I mean, the task itself is great. I think putting any puzzle together, especially something that's so 3D, is great. One thing I hated is that as a viewer, it was really hard to see what was happening. They all had headlamps, and I was like, what is happening?
And the dragon was like dark green in a very shadowed cave. So yeah, you're right. It was kind of a dark scene.
Yeah. That's so funny because I was thinking from a producer standpoint. I felt like I saw lights in the back, and I was thinking, I wonder why they didn't add more lights. Okay, well, they can see what's going on with their headlamps. However, the headlamps are so small, I'm a little bit lost. So it's like the great thing about the race is that you somewhat play along. This one you could not, because you couldn't really figure out what was the head versus the tail.
Yeah, that's true.
Fun twist, have no light.
It was glow in the dark.
And have just their headlights, and they can't see anything. And then we have like
night vision.
Yeah, like on Survivor, how they have the night vision and you can see everything. That would have been cool. And it would have been hard to put that together in the dark.
That would have been actually really cool. And I think it would add a layer of like making it more challenging.
I know, it seems somewhat easy. I'm like, wait, they all pretty much got it the first time.
Yeah,
except for John and...
Yeah, because they forgot to attach, I think, the tail to the dragon.
Yeah. Or it was like somewhat like attached, but somewhat not attached.
Right.
I have no idea. I couldn't see. Like, is my eyesight going now that I'm getting older? What's happening?
But this is another point in this leg of the race where I feel like we see Todd and Ashley. Again, they show up. They fell back in the placements a little bit. Mm-hmm. Ashley's, I think a little flustered about that. They still know that they're ahead of Robin and Chelsea, but even when they're assembling this dragon, they just couldn't get on the same page. And I feel like it lost them even more time. And they're just not there this leg of the race. I don't know.
They were puzzle pieces this leg of the race. Their dragon head didn't match their tail. But I do have to say that even though they weren't on the same page, they argue sweetly. It's not like
it's not
to each other, which is also really cute because it's like their high school sweethearts. It's kind of like the romantic love story that everyone wants. And then you see them and you're like, I'm surprised by them because I didn't think I would like them as much as I do. I think they're super likable.
Yep.
And she's strong and he's funny. So
yeah, and I think for a couple team too, like just again in my Amazing Race rewatch, some couples earlier on in the series were awful to each other. And the way they communicated, and Todd and Ashley clearly know how to communicate with one another and when to lift the other one up when the other's down. For whatever reason, they just were not in tune with the tasks at hand this leg. And it was just really interesting to see because they have been, I think, a very consistent team from the very beginning.
Well, and this is the point where my brain was like, okay, Todd and Ashley even made a comment about this at the end where they were like, it's our turn to be in the back, which I think the reason why Greg and John are doing so well, and not that I advocate for anybody doing poorly early on in the race, is because they made mistakes episodes 1, 2, and 3, and they were never in the top 3. Maybe the third leg, I don't remember. But now they're doing so well, and they're not making any mistakes because they've had to learn all those lessons early on in the race, where now Todd and Ashley, who've been kind of consistently top 5 the entire race, haven't really made any mistakes. And now this is the first time they're going to bicker with each other, as cute as it is. It's a bad time to be like making mistakes because there's not very many teams left. And I think that's just kind of where they are. This is the first time they're experiencing a little bit of like stress and defeat. Yeah.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of Tyler and I, because like we got super cocky. And then when we got cocky, all of a sudden we were like, oh my God, we're 7 hours behind other teams and you're clawing your way back up. Because when you kind of feel like, oh, okay, you have the rhythm, and then you get knocked down to reality.
Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if Greg and John race as if they're last always.
We always told ourselves that when we were racing.
Oh yeah, when we were racing, we were like, we're in
racing
last
for
place. Even if we're in first, we're in last place. Let's go.
Yeah.
And I think that they race just so because of their experience earlier on in the race, it's really affected them, which is, I mean, it's working for them.
Well, after the cave and assembling the dragons, teams are having to drive to Fonda Fish Farm where they'll receive their next clue, some more self-driving. I actually liked this moment where we see Joel and Garrett in the car, and we kind of hear where their head is at in the race in terms of how they view their fellow racers. Joel says he would like to see Todd and Ashley get eliminated because they're scarier in terms of their racing style than another team like Robin and Chelsea. I like these little moments because as a viewer too, we really can't grasp like who they think is a threat in the race. Like even when they were voting for the U-turn, we didn't get a lot of like reasoning in how certain teams voted. So I liked hearing this, and I wish we would get more of these moments with teams on the show because it helps us understand like, oh, okay, so they're viewing, Todd and Ashley to be kind of a scary team. And as a viewer, I'm not like they're like scary, but they are consistent.
Yeah, like that's why it would be great to see certain teams on a train together instead of in the car separate, because then you can see them actually say that and kind of like connive against each other and okay, maybe give them the wrong information or tell them this or let's help this team and not this team or whatever it is. But that's the only way we're getting any information of what teams they want to do well and who they see as their biggest competition.
Yeah.
See, our season was like very heavy on talking about other teams, and I think this season is the opposite. The show just needs to find a happy medium. I love the like relationships between the partners, but I think with 90 minutes, you have to expand it and have that. What do teams think about each other? What are this
Give
team
us
has been
fun rivalry or something?
Well, and you have a team like Greg and John who's won 3 legs, now 4, and I haven't heard a clip of another team saying anything about that.
No,
why isn't there another team
like,
saying
it's
that
annoying?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And that's like great for viewers because we're all just kind of like, oh, they're just so good. But I don't know what the other teams actually think about them doing so well.
I think Todd and Ashley were the only team, and that was last week, where they're like, I just really want to beat these boys because they're always getting first. Like that was the only time we ever really heard that kind of conversation or something being said about how good Greg and John are doing.
And not that it needs to be the whole show, but it just needs a little bit of like, I am making my own opinions as a viewer, but I really would love to know like what my favorites think about what's going on with the other teams. You know what I mean? Like I want that.
Yeah.
But I almost think like, do the other teams even know? Because are they so far behind Greg and John that they don't even know them? Like, I'm wondering because listen, they're good racers. They are great racers. However, from a viewer standpoint, they're going to be a little boring because give us something like trip, lose something. I don't care if it's you fake trip. Like you can't make it look that easy, right?
Fair. I mean, that's fair. I feel like even if they bickered at a task, not like yell at each other, just some kind of bickering or some little slip up, but everything is just so cool, calm, and collected, which again, good for you. You guys are an amazing team. But yeah, as a viewer, it's kind of like, I want to see you struggle. I want to see a little bit of adversity.
I do too. Say mom loves me more than you. No, she like, I don't care. Give me something. Your siblings. My brother and I would have thrown each other out of the window. Like, come on.
They need Morgan and Lena energy.
I loved those girls.
Me too.
Well, when they get to the Fonda Fish Farm, it is the detour for this leg of the race. Scrape off or swap out. In scrape off, teams make their way to floating containers by kayak, and then they will have to remove barnacles from the underside of the floating rings. Teams will have to clean off 2 of them by scraping them off with a chain. In swap out, teams will have to kayak out into the Adriatic Sea to search for marked buoys and pulling a line of mussels to the surface and then swap the buoy out with a new one. And they will have to do this twice. Laura, which side of the detour do you think you're choosing?
Okay, what's so funny is I knew how I was going to answer this until you actually said it and read it and described it out loud. I was going to say switch out. Easy, it's fun, it's cool. You go out into the ocean, you're doing your thing, you're kayaking, how sexy. But then I was just thinking, you know how they're saying like killer whales are out there and like eating people in kayaks and stuff?
Oh yeah, and the Mediterranean.
Like, could you imagine if you're out there and you're like looking for these like, you know, whatever the
not the killer whales.
The mussels or mollusks or whatever they are.
I honestly have the chills right now. I'm like sweating. Like, what if that happened?
Or when freaking Rob was swimming in the water, I was like, what are you doing?
What is that? What is he doing? Seriously, he could have been like fish food. Right? Like, you guys, are you Googling if there's killer whales out there? Are you? Because I swear, I have been seeing way too much stuff about whales eating kayakers.
Boats.
And eating boats and doing that kind of stuff to really, like, you know.
That is hilarious. So you would have done the scrape off, is what you're saying?
I still would have done it, but I might be in a whale's belly right now. Like Pinocchio.
Will, what do you think we would have done?
Scrape off. I think needle in a haystack challenges are so hit and miss. And I think if you, like Greg and John said, if you're there first, you have way more options. And I think depending on where we were, if we were first, maybe we would have done switch out. But I do think we would have talked and chosen the scrape off one. I think it's very straightforward.
I was going to say scrape off is a lot more straightforward. I think you kind of know what you have to do. Scrape off the barnacles. Where with swap out, even if you're first, and I do love and appreciate the thought process Greg and John had. Like, you're right. When they said it's a needle in a haystack challenge, there's more needles to choose from or find. But even then, it's still a learning curve because you don't know exactly what you're looking for in terms of the marked buoys. It took them a minute to realize, oh, look, these buoys are marked with the yellow, red, yellow markers of the race. Where with scrape off, you just got to kayak to the floating rings and scrape them off. It's just like one and done, where you're not exerting as much energy going back and forth.
Yeah. The other thing about
did 2 mussels at once, they had to go out, do one, swap out, then bring it back.
Yeah.
To put them up on the dock and then take another buoy out and do it all over again. So to me, that just seems more time consuming.
While I love you so much, I think that us kayaking together has always been heated.
I'm gonna drop a clip of us kayaking in this moment, FYI.
Wait, can you describe? Tell me what
we just can never get on the same page when we kayak. I think because we're huge humans. You know, Laura, we're both over 6 We are large people, but I think we both like being in a leader role. And I think we don't like, we'll say, okay, I'm going to call it out or I'm going to do it in the back. And then in 3 minutes, now it's all gone. Like it doesn't ever stick. And we can get very sassy.
Have you tipped?
No, we've never
tipped, but we'll go in the wrong direction and we'll spin and
we have kayaked many a times.
Yeah.
And we always come out of it. We survive. I don't think we're that terrible at it.
No, it just causes us to bicker more than normal.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I would avoid a kayak as much as possible.
So you would have done the barnacles.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Even though we would have to kayak to the barnacles, babe.
Yeah,
How
but
would
that's
you
like
have done the barnacles? Would you have sat down and done it
No.
that way? Like, I was like, why are you, what?
Yeah, sitting down, I don't feel like you would get as much of a...
No.
you have no leverage.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was kind of interesting that Todd and Ashley did it that way.
Yeah, I would be curious to know why.
I think they probably didn't think to stand up, that they might have thought they would have fallen in the water.
Or yeah, they might not have balance, or maybe they thought it was easier and it worked better for them. But I think for me, no.
Your like legs are in the water for something to come and like snip at that.
Laura, you are on this one track mind of the ocean
I don't know
right
why.
now.
You literally said something that like triggered me. I did not even think about it until you said it.
I love it.
I've been triggered.
Well, going back to the swap out, so Greg and John seem to pick up on it pretty quickly, of course. Rob and Corey show up. They jump right into this detour, but I don't think that they thoroughly read their clue because they forget to grab a new buoy to swap out with the old one. And then they forgot to grab the muscle. And like two big mistakes that are part of the detour. However, I do think they pivoted pretty quickly. Well, no, because they ended up going back out to try to find the buoy.
That's when he was swimming. What the heck?
Yeah, that seems like time wasted. I would have been like, screw it. We're just going to go to the next detour.
Okay,
right?
so you don't think that they could have just put the buoy, they had to secure the buoy back or something?
They didn't know where it was.
Yeah,
they had to go get. No, they just had to go get the bag of mussels.
The mussels.
Yeah, but I'm saying, couldn't they just throw that buoy and then gone to find another one?
Totally. They should have.
That's what I was thinking.
I don't know why they kept looking for that one, unless they were like, "Oh, you can't. You have."
I wonder if it's like once you claim a buoy, like you have to swap that one out.
I would have immediately been like, "Oh, bye. I'm not going back out there to
I'm gonna go get some barnacles.
I need to go find.
I'm thinking that's what would have happened. That's probably what happened because they went back to try to find it, and then that's when they decided we're gonna go to the other side of the detour. So I wonder if they had to swap that one out specifically. But yeah, they end up switching to the other detour. They don't use the express pass. I think because they already were aware that they haven't seen Todd and Ashley and they haven't seen Robin and Chelsea, it probably was a safe bet to not use the express pass. Because why would you if you already know there's like 3 teams behind you, right?
100%. No.
I think they made the smart call. I think having it for the last leg, you can use it, which is next week. It sets them up so nicely to go into the future legs. Like, they'll go to the final 4. They will not get eliminated next week.
They're getting first place next week in my mind.
If they use it correctly, they could use it on an easier task and then get tripped up on another task. But they're not going to get eliminated.
No, I think that they've secured a spot in the top 4 by not playing their express pass this leg. I think that is just like an easy breezy, beautiful cover girl. But what I did love is with Scrape Off. So Steve and Anna Lee were the first team to get to that side of the detour. They seem to really understand the task at hand. They're communicating and working really well together. When they're done and Rob and Corey are now showing up, I really loved seeing that side of Anna Lee where we've seen her be so competitive all season long, where she took a beat and said, hey, Rob, hey, Corey, like, you want to this is how you want to stand. This is how you want to do it. I loved that moment. I thought it was just a complete side of Anna Lee that we hadn't seen in the last like 2 episodes. So I thought that was a nice moment.
I agree. I think it was also, maybe it's because it's father, daughter, son, father, that she felt some sort of like connection to them of, hey, plus you scratch my back, I scratch yours.
Mm-hmm. And they've already read their clue to know that they're going to a pit stop. And I think just being done with it, it gives you a sense of calm to go into the next task, whatever it is. And then you feel a little bit more comfortable giving info. Whereas if they were actually still doing the challenge, I don't think that they would have said anything to them. But I did like it. It was nice. Because I would have done it too.
It's also good karma.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Facts. And karma is part of the race. Now let's talk about Todd and Ashley too. Again, another moment in this leg where they're just not in tune. They forget the chains. They get to the detour and they're like, where are the chains? Ooh, you forgot them at the dock.
Go back, babies.
Oh my goodness. So many silly mistakes. But before we talk about the pit stop, obviously Robin and Chelsea are at this point, I think, very far behind. Navigation did not serve them well this leg, but I loved the moment of them when they ripped open the clue after completing the detour, and they already accepted their fate. They already know that they're going to be the last team. And Chelsea goes, do you want to jump into the lake? Do you want to swim? Like, I just thought, like, you know what? Like, if we're going to go out, let's go out on this high note. Like, let's enjoy. Like, that's what they said. That was the word of this leg for them, I think, was just enjoy it. And I just really loved seeing that because, like, yeah, like why not and enjoy it before it's over?
I have a question. Do you know how far behind they were?
No
Hours.
Hours?
I mean, even you can tell with the sky.
The sun set.
The sun was set.
Okay, because I was thinking if they were hours, what I would have done is I would have done that, and then I would have gone back to that little town, and whatever money I had left, I would have gone and like
had a drink.
Had a drink. I actually would want one of those like wood things, like as a souvenir.
Yes.
Like maybe go to a castle, meet a prince, you know, do those kinds of things. And then like the next day, or it would probably be where Phil would have to come find me.
And we're just drunk at a bar.
I'm like, hey, Phil.
Oh my God. Yeah. I love how you're like, and then Phil would have to come find me.
He'd have to go in his own amazing race.
It reminds me of when Oswald and Danny in like an earlier season of the race, they just ended up going shopping in Hong Kong because they were like, screw it. And they just did a shopping spree.
But then how did they get eliminated? Did Phil come find them?
I need to go back. This was like season 2. So I'm a little rusty on that season, but
that's what I was thinking is like, did they really, people could get lost. People can get flat tires. I mean, there's so many things that could happen that unless you 100% know that, okay, there's no way whatsoever, I would still keep going.
I think you should. I think I mean, them jumping in the water, I think was, the viewer, we all knew that they were eliminated.
Oh, you know what? It was a non-elimination.
Oh, for Danny and Oswald.
Yes.
Hey, that is luck.
Honestly, you know what producers should have said is like, we are so fucking pissed with this disrespect of our time. We're done.
But then you pull out gifts that you bought the whole production.
It's Bertram Phil, and you're like, okay, fine, come here.
Such a memorable, amazing race moment, and they ended up coming back for All Stars. Like,
yeah, that's pretty epic.
But then they take all your stuff, so they probably had to give away all their gifts to Phil.
Back then I feel like they take your money when you're last place, and you have to give it over, and then you have to beg and get your money back. And yeah, now this is inspiring me. My next rewatch is going to be season 2 because Danny and Oswald were so iconic. Yeah. Anywho, time for that pit stop. It was called Grad Terreur, but I don't know how to pronounce it, but they just had to go to their pit stop. And the placements were Greg and John, their 4th first place finish in a row. When that happened, I looked at Will and I go, they could literally easily just like win out the rest of the season. They're just doing so good. They're peaking. They're finding their stride.
That would be so annoying. That would just be so lame.
I mean, it's great for them, but it's boring TV.
Second place, Joel and Garrett, who I feel like they've been having fun. They're having the best time on this race. I appreciate their enthusiasm. They've forgotten a few things like their fanny pack and then their Amazing Race notebook last week's episode, but they're still in it. They're still having the time of their life. And I think maybe that positivity is what's serving them well in the race. In third place, again, really doing a great job this leg, Steve and Annalee. Fourth place, Robin, Corey. Fifth place, Todd and Ashley. And then sadly, we say goodbye to Team Purple, Robin and Chelsea. last check into the pit stop as the sun was setting. But they made me cry when they got eliminated because I just like really loved Robin's reflection on just like life and like getting through the hard times, like the death of her husband and then a brain tumor. And she's a strong ass woman and there's no denying that. And then I laughed so hard when Chelsea was like, I want to stick to a detour of me just like having to vacuum my living room.
Like, I hate fucking vacuuming. Why would you?
I don't want to do that. I need to do it and I don't want to. Yeah, this episode, the mistakes to me, they're great as a viewer, but just as a racer, it's just kind of shocking still that these little mistakes keep happening. And to be honest, most of them were reading clues and directions. None of the tasks like actually tripped anybody up, and I would prefer tasks to trip people up rather than like the clue part of it.
Yeah, and
Rob and Corey didn't read that clue at the what's it called? That's why they didn't grab the muscles. Anyway,
take a shot every time a team makes a mistake this episode. It could have been a drinking game.
Oh God.
Oh my God, we would all be passed out on the ground.
I will say, this overall episode was a little underwhelming for me. I think because the first episode and how hyped up Slovenia was last week and how incredible those tasks were, this one just fell a little flat for me. The caves were really cool, but outside of that, it just felt very linear in terms of just like getting to point A to point B. I also feel like it's kind of similar with Andrea and Milena. You knew that they were really far behind. You knew they were going to get eliminated. And with this new era of the race with no non-eliminations, you already know the outcome. So it doesn't make for an exciting end to the episode. I feel like the same can be said for Robin and Chelsea. They were just so far behind. You never saw them with any other of the other teams after they left Congress Square. I don't know. I was just kind of like,
It's my least favorite of the season. I'll say that.
Do you ever find it hard to watch sometimes? Like, I feel like I get so like
critical,
like, jazzed up. No, like I get so overexcited because I'm like, oh, I wish like you get those feelings and those emotions from when you're on the race. For some reason, I get those like the majority of episodes, but I think like I don't know what it was about this one. It strangely like gave me those butterflies. Even though it wasn't super exciting in regards to the challenges, it's still, I don't know. I still really liked it.
We love The Amazing Race.
Yeah, we do. We're super fans.
We're super fans with a
We're
penguin.
super freaky fans.
Next week on Amazing Race, 5 teams remain as they travel and skydive into Stockholm. Love Stockholm. There's no room for mistakes at this point of the race, obviously. We hear Anna Lee running and she says, it's a foot race. I feel like maybe next week is going to be filled with some action. It might be even more exciting than this week's episode. But I feel like now, final 5, we're getting very close to the finale. There are no room for mistakes at this point in the race. And I would say that even with this episode, there's no room for mistakes. What do you all think in terms of predictions? Who do you think is out next week? And who do you think really is the contender to take it all?
My bottom 2 next week are, I think, Joel and Garrett and Todd and Ashley. Like, Joel and Garrett, to me, don't have the hustle that I think it takes to get to a Final Four. And I think Todd and Ashley, with how bad they performed this leg of the race, they are either going to crash and burn or they're going to overcome it. I think all the other teams are overcoming things quicker than those 2.
Fair. I mean, like, look at Steve and Anna Lee.
Mm-hmm.
I think they recovered. They're a prime example of bouncing back.
And they've done it more than once. So
yeah.
I think I would agree with you. I really like Joel and Garrett, especially. I just think that like the beard, I mean, that's its own character. I feel like regardless, they're so grateful for this experience, but I don't see them making it to Final 4, Final 3.
Yeah, I would say Joel and Garrett and Todd and Ashley too. I would put them at the bottom for next week. Mm-hmm. I know Ashley made a comment at the pit stop being like, everyone's kind of had a day where they're at the back and today was our day. But I'm also like, you don't want it to be at this late in the race either, because it is kind of harder to recover with less teams. There really is no room for mistakes anymore. And they made a few this leg. So I'm like, they really have to bounce back next leg to stay in it. But also, like, in terms of their placement, I would say like they've been pretty consistent fifth place throughout with a few fourth and third, second place finishes, but fifth has been like the spot for them. So I don't know if that will mean like it's running their course next week because now there's 5 spots left and again, no room for error. But yeah, Joel and Garrett, I think just them having so much fun with the race, I think gives them a little bit more of an edge over Todd and Ashley because as much as Joel and Garrett have fluctuated in the placements, I just think something's working for them in terms of their optimism, their enthusiasm, the love for the experience. It's gotten them this far.
I also wonder if it's going to be an even playing field when they get there, or is it going to be different flights, or is it going to be depending on what number you skydive in? I think that that's all going to make a huge difference as well.
And I mean, at some point, it'll be a foot race based on that preview with Steve and Annalise running for their lives.
Who can run?
I'm excited. I mean, it's been a fun season, and it's been a fun season to come back to in terms of like the COVID related seasons. It's been a really nice breath of fresh air. I've really appreciated this season and the teams, and I just can't believe we're almost done. The finale's like in 2.5, 3 weeks.
3 weeks.
Wild. Well, Laura, thank you for joining us for this recap.
Oh my God. Thank you, babies, for having me. I feel so honored.
Of course. Maybe we'll have to do another like winner circle recap. I feel like we did that like the last 2 seasons where we welcome whoever the team is to the winner circle and kind of do a deep dive with their experience and wrap out season 35 with a bang. Well, thank you everyone for watching. We'll be back next week. We hope you had an amazing Thanksgiving and have a great weekend. Bye, everyone.